Good afternoon. In this video, we're going to go over this week's options watch list. Before I get into the watch list, if you're not in the room, you can find the link in the description of the video and in bio section of social media. Also, please subscribe to the channel and like the video if you haven't. Looking at the economic calendar this week, we don't have too much except for Wednesday. Wednesday we have CPI in the morning, and we have FOMC at 2 p.m. on Wednesday. Now, this is not the big FOMC. This is probably just a statement. There's no Powell speaking, no forecast. It's just one of those, basically just an update that they have. I don't think it's going to be much of a mover, but sometimes something in the statement could catch the market off guard and just react. So just make a note that FOMC is this Wednesday. There's no Powell, and Powell seems to be the one that makes the big moves when he has his press conference. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but we'll deal with it if it does happen to move and stuff like that. So that's why you need to be in the room. The big gap up and gap downs change the dynamics of the play substantially, especially when they have massive gap ups and gap downs like that we've been seeing. And then every morning I post my trade ideas of what my favorite 2 or 3 plays that open I'll be watching and adjust throughout the day. So that's why you need to be in the room to catch those. Otherwise, you're gonna miss out. Okay, so now I have I only have one on the bearish side because everything's been getting kind of beat down lately, but it doesn't mean that they can't go lower, because they can obviously go lower than what they are. But SPY is at a critical point. I'm going to talk about SPY right here first before I get into the watch list. SPY, it did close right at the 20 EMA, well, slightly below it on the daily. So as you can see, a gap down here, pop back up, fill the gap. Then it had this little inside day right here, and we had a big gap down and a dump. I don't know what day the 28th was. Looks like a Tuesday, because this was Monday and this was Tuesday. So then it gapped down and chopped. We had a big gap up. Then we had another inside. Well, no, it wasn't really inside day because it's this, the bottom's not down here, but it's kind of close to an inside down day. So we could see a possible gap down to a bigger drop. But if we don't, I think that if it gets over this level right here on the ROA, the 441 area, 441.50, that it's probably going to make a run to 445, 450. So I would watch SPY on both directions. I mean, I think it's basically gonna depends on what the gap up does or the gap down does and how much it is and stuff like that. But right now it's at a point where it could go either way. I could make a case for either direction, but it doesn't matter what I think. It's what the price does. So that's what we'll have to see what happens. About under 437, I think it'll end up going to 430, 428, but over 441.50, it's going to go to 445, possibly 450. We got earnings this week. We get banks coming up this week. Next week we get the real big kickoff where you get the FANGs coming in soon, mid-month, end of month. So earnings season is upon us, and that will greatly impact. Now, traditionally, what's been happening the last few earnings seasons is that they've been running up or just not been pressing the earnings that much and just been dumping on ER, even good ER. I mean, you have not banks, but Amazon and other, Facebook and Google have like really good earnings. I don't think Google dropped. I think Google actually popped, but they just have good earnings and they just sell off because just the EPS just doesn't line up with the runs we've had. But anyways, speaking of that, we'll start with Netflix. Netflix is the one. It's the only one on the bearish side. It's got earnings this next couple weeks, and you know, on the weekly, it just it did get out of this chop area, came back down, and it's made a big run into earnings. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if this thing actually comes back down and retests this 585 area in the next couple weeks. So anytime you have these exaggerated moves like right here, it gets away from the RCT trend line right here, it comes back down and retests it in a couple days. This has got the same kind of look here as it did right here. You get a little bit of a head and shoulders. You get the left, you get the head and the right shoulder right here on the 1 hour. So underneath 630, probably going to push to 620 to 610. 605, 600 would be the big number. If it does break 600, it's probably going to end up going down to the 590, 585 area. So anytime these things get too far away from the RCT trend line, it just likes to act as a magnet and pull it back down to it. And it's going up, in upward direction. So I do think it does end up revisiting 585. It could chop, it could run more into earnings, but I don't know. I'm just looking at it from the short side. I think it's got some pullback in it. So also considering that the RSI on the weekly is over 73, and you get a bearish divergence going on right here. You get the higher high right there, and the RSI is making a lower high. Histogram's making a lower high. Stock. I mean, you get multiple signals right here. You get one, the MACD, histogram, and the stochastics. You got 4 indicators showing it's a bearish divergence. The more indicators that show that inflection, it's going to end up happening. So I think it's going to pull back. Everyone else is probably going to end up thinking it's going to pop more, and it could. I'm not going to say it's not going to, but I think it's going to pull back. Now, getting on to the stocks have been beaten down. FedEx I've been watching. I've been saying the shipping season is coming up, so I would watch it over Fridays. Was this Friday right here? No, this is Thursday. I watch it over Friday, so I have over 225 for push to 227, 230, 235 is gap resistance. It's likely going to end up stalling out right there, but I would definitely watch FedEx for a bounce over 225. ROKU, I think, is getting ready to make a strong move, and I know it started to on Wednesday, I believe, and it's just consolidating right here. I'll blow it up a little more right here. Get these small narrow days above the 20 EMA. Now the thing that kind of irked me a little bit was which day was it? I think it was this day right here. Yeah, it started to get momentum right there, and the analysts came out and crapped on ROKU, and they do that so the ROKU will sell off and people will dump their shares because analysts are saying bad things about it, but they're just a bunch of sleaze bags. They end up putting out bad ratings and bad analysis so they can get cheap shares before it pops, because it started to pop here, and if they didn't do that, this thing would probably be up to 380 by now, but they crapped on it, and now it's starting to come back to life again. So anytime these analysts, I just think they're really sketchy, sleazy people, and they end up like doing like a we'll just right here, I think right around in this area, they came out with a buy rating or something like that. So they do that to get the stock to move up more so they can dump their shares, and then they end up crapping on them, giving bad analysis so they can get cheap shares. You just gotta pretty much do the opposite of what they say, because they're very biased, and they have a motive and agenda to their analysis. So I know that there's probably some of the analysis people that aren't going to agree with me on that, but I don't really care. And that's just what I've seen. They just like to buy ratings at all-time highs so they can get out with more greedy money and dump on the shares before it starts to make its run, so they can get in cheap. And ROKU's just been beaten down for so long, since August, for the last month or two. Let's see, since July. So yeah, the last few months, it's right at a point where it likes to bounce. So I think that ROKU's end up seeing 380, 400. So I'd watch it over Friday's high over 328 for a push to 340. Get 340, 350 be a big area right here. And then you got this 360, 370, basically every $5 to $10 on ROKU. But ROKU gets any strength behind it over Friday's high, you're gonna end up seeing a 20 to 30, even $40 move, because Roku, when it starts to get breakout, you get these kind of parabolic moves right here, right here. It gets momentum, it's just going to take off, and I think Roku is geared up for that. Now hopefully Roku doesn't do like it did on Wednesday. We'll have a big gap down and just pop, and just with the market chopping that day, that just was I did not expect this move. If you watch the video recap, you get my point, what I was talking about. So Facebook, Facebook is one that's just been getting all kinds of whistleblowing and all kinds of bad publicity. But Facebook just makes way too much money. They'll end up rebounding. They've gotten investigations. They've had other things happen in the past with the analytics company. I don't remember what the name of it was. Cambridge Analytics, yeah, they end up bouncing back. So I mean, anytime that Facebook has a bad PR or something like that, to me, it's just a buying opportunity. Facebook, these internet companies like Facebook and Google and Amazon, they make way too much money. I mean, these are buying opportunities. People are always going to put money in ad revenue on these companies and stuff like that, these internet companies. So I think this is a buying opportunity, in my opinion. This, like I said, but I always say this is not investment advice whatsoever. This is just my opinion. So take it with a grain of salt. I would watch it over what is this? 333, 334, push to 340, gets over to 340, you get 345, 350, basically every $5, 355 right here. 360. I think that it's poised to make a bounce. I mean, it's kind of bottoming out right here, consolidating at the 320, 330 area. So an RSI is definitely oversold on the daily, and histogram is starting to go positive, starting to go up, which usually means it's a good I'm having a brain fart here. It's usually a good indicator when it starts going up that it could end up reversing. So I do like seeing histogram actually starting to go positive. So I think that Facebook, we could end up seeing a run to 350. Now Microsoft's just been not that fun to trade lately. It's just, this was such a good area, 280, but I really thought it was going to end up trying to go lower. But 300 is like a magnet for Microsoft. So it did have a nice little run from the 380, and now it's flagging over the 20 EMA on the hourly, and it's over on the 20 EMA on the daily. Now if we can get over this 296, 297 area, I'll say 297, I'll round up. It's probably going to make a run to 300, fill a gap. And you also could say it's got a little bit of an inverted head and shoulders. I mean, you could say this is the head right here. This is a little shoulder, this little shoulder. You can say that's the shoulder. You can just say anything you want. You can kind of see there's a little bit of a pattern right here. If it does get over this 297 area, I think 300, 302, 305, it's going to come really fast. All-time high is 305.81. It could end up making a new all-time high on Microsoft. And also you can see it came down, it tested the 20 EMA on the weekly, the RCT trend line on the weekly, and it did find support, and it's bouncing. So that will just confirm everything if it gets over 297 for a push to 300. Now BA is just we'll have to see what happens with BA. I mean, the weekly, it's above the 20 EMA, which is a good sign. It is, kind of like chopping underneath the 230 area. So if it does manage, and you can also see that it's making an ascendant triangle. Maybe guess how you can draw it like right here, or you could draw it like that. And it's flattening out right here. So over 229, 230. If it does manage to get over 230, probably will make a run to 240. But BA has just been so complicated to trade because it's just likes to chop and have all these inside days. And here, I mean, this thing can chop between 230 and 225 for days, like it does here and here. But it does get over 230. I think it could make a possible run to 240. at some point BA is gonna start getting some positive momentum going. It's just been beaten down for so long that I'd like to see it get back up to the 270 area, but I don't know. It's going to depend on news and stuff like that. Anything else that comes BA's way, hopefully it won't have a negative impact, but you know, I will watch it on the short side too. So I do like to, even though I'm watching it long, and that is primarily my area. When I make these watch lists, I focus on the tickers that have the highest potential of making the bullish run, but I also watch it on the short side too if it turns around. I mean, same with, you know, Facebook. You know, if Facebook does manage to get below underneath this 325, I will watch it on the short side. I think Facebook's downside is very, very limited. So get back onto the list. QCOM. Now I'm watching this on the weekly. It's right at support right here at the 125 area. It's bounced the last 2 or 3 times right here. Bounced here, well, here, and here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th time. 1, 2, 5th time. So we'll have to see if it will actually bounce here, but also have to be aware that you get a big inverted cup and handle on the weekly. You get the cup, and you could say that's the handle. And if it does get underneath this 125, it could drop to 120 to 110. So I would keep an eye on that scenario too. But I would watch it over. Let's see, is this Friday right here? Over Friday's high of 128.50 for push to 130. 132, 134. Basically, every whole dollar or so on the QCOM is going to end up being a resistance. You have the biggest resistance right here at the 130, 131, 132, and 134 area. If it does get over 135, I mean, you kind of, RCT trend line is up here at 140. So anytime it gets disconnected from it, does end up catching up. So it is slightly pointing up. So it will probably act as a magnet and pull it up. So we'll have to see if that happens. The last one I have is WIN. Now I'm watching WIN because of there is a little bit of a head and shoulders right there, but I'm watching it. It's starting to, you know, consolidate really well underneath the 20 EMA right here. If it does manage to get any momentum over 87.50, it's probably going to fill that gap to 90, get to 92.50. 95 is going to be gap resistance. Now, if it does manage to get over that, you can see right here, you get an inverted head and shoulders right here. You get the left shoulder, the head, and the right shoulder right here. It's not, no pattern is ever going to be picture perfect. They're all going to be weird looking and stuff like that. So you can also say there's an ascending triangle right here, flattening out. I mean, there's multiple patterns in here. So yeah, over the 87 area for push to 90, 92.50, 95. It likely will stall out at 95. Sometimes WIN will have these strong days. I mean, it doesn't look like much, but 89, 80 to 92, that's a $3 run. That's pretty good on WIN. And when WIN has these, they move really well on options, so that could be a pretty big day on WIN. So definitely be watching WIN for a push and fill the gaps on that. So. And any news that does drop, and the gap downs, gap ups, like I said in the beginning of the video, will have a impact on the dynamics of the play. So that's why you need to be in the room and keep an eye on what I'm looking at. So that's going to do it for the watch list. And thanks for watching.